Lobbies and gentlegrams, in today's episode of Napoleon Complexes mistreating people of the opposite sexes, we gotta touch on the tiny Toronto tough talker who went trigger happy on a toenail, manically making Megan move from bullets, which made the maple syrup mini-man move from Miami Sweets to maximum security misery. Now, I don't wish jail on anyone, but that's one of the dumbest crimes I've ever seen done. Who tries clipping toenails with a gun? Guilty or innocent, the drama's just begun because we're not even touching on Tory's case with Meg. But instead, let's look at how he lusts over Lobby like a chicken to its egg. Even behind bars, the bald small goofball glazes and gobbles the goblets of the gaveling Graham. He's been dissing the Compton Kung Fu killer even while he's stuck in the can. In defense of the defamation drizzler, Tory looks to inherit the beef, but while they're both small in height, the short-statured sharpshooting assassin, the spectacular kid from a mad city, is someone Tory cannot defeat. Now drop a like and subscribe to hear me rhyme on repeat. And Lobbies and gentlegrams, we got a lot to touch on because Tory Lanez has been going absolutely nuts for the last 5 years. And I mean that in a good way and obviously a terrible way as well. So if you guys have been living under a rock, for the last 2 years, Tory Lanez has served 2 years of a 10-year prison sentence after being found guilty of hitting Megan Thee Stallion in the toe with a firearm. And everything we've seen from Tory Lanez in the last, I'd say damn near 4 years, has been absolute madness. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. Obviously, that crime in itself is absolute madness. What's even crazier is that Tory Lanez has, from day one, continued to maintain his innocence. Even after being found guilty, he was recorded on a jail phone call, apologizing relentlessly, but not for anything in specific. He also devoted an entire album to discuss the situation. Then, once he was locked up, he became the first artist in history to figure out how to record with studio quality in a prison. Once the prison found out, he was stripped of whatever equipment he was using, but that hasn't stopped him from continuing to record. He dropped a Kendrick Lamar diss track seemingly recorded on a jail phone. And now he just released an entire album where he's dissing everyone from Jay-Z to Rock Nation to his old lawyer to Megan Thee Stallion to Megan Cunniff to maybe Kendrick Lamar, maybe Doechii, and maybe Ray Vaughn and all of TDE. So we're going to break it all down and establish where it went wrong for Tory, because even though with his relentlessness, a comeback is most definitely not off the table, this has been one of the most deranged downfalls we've ever seen in the history of music. So let me start by saying, while I have my many criticisms of Tory, I actually like most of his music. I'm a big concert goer, if that's a word, and for a while I was usually going to arena shows, bigger artists like Jay-Z, Kanye, Lil Wayne, Drake, Future, etc. But Tory Lanez, way back in his early career in 2016, was one of the first artists I've ever seen perform live in a small venue. And I bring this up because this was one of the most, scratch that, this was by far the most insane concert I have still to this day ever seen. I mean, this guy basically said F a stage and did the entire performance standing on the hands of the crowd. He told everyone to put their hands up and he just started moonwalking on top of us like he was Michael Jackson and Moses reincarnated splitting the Red Sea. This guy put on a live-action Spider-Man performance for an hour and a half straight, singing on top of us, crushing the forearms of every single person in that crowd. Bro, I left that concert, it felt like I took 20 flu shots in my veins, conjuring up the arm strength to make sure this guy didn't fall flat on his face. And then he performed Liddy again while he was on top of everyone. Nah, it was over. That solidified him as the most, I don't want to say talented, but definitely the most something performer of all time. Centric, energetic, the most dedicated performer of all time. I don't know, but I'll remember that moment forever. And I bring this up because just like that performance, Tory Lanez as an artist has always had this energy that is absolutely unmatched. And you could tell by his relentlessness in every situation. I forgot to even bring up the fact that by the end of the show, this guy climbed the hands of the crowd to move all the way to the end of the stage and then climbed on top of the balcony to perform in a mosh pit with the entire crowd that was on the balcony. I don't have footage of that, but he did it again in Boston, so I'm going to show you guys that right here. But beyond just this insane risk-averse energy within his performances, it was also his unwillingness to conform to any genre and being relentless to insert himself artistically into every style of music. I mean, Tory Lanez does it all. He sings, he raps, he does R&B, trap, he's done disco albums, dancehall music, he's been in battle raps, he's done conceptual storytelling. And while that's definitely respectable, it's also part of the problem. Similar to his Canadian counterpart Drake, I think that Tory Lanez has never developed his own strong artistic identity because he tries to be all things at once. And let me explain that. We'll peel the layers back here. So the first time I heard Tory Lanez, I think was late 2014 to 2015. And it was the type of thing where I'd see this guy's name on a song, but each song sounded so different vocally and stylistically that I never knew who I was listening to. Like, for example, when I heard Big Sean for the first time, I was able to tell every other time that I heard Big Sean on a song. With Tory Lanez, he never sounded bad per se, it just always sounded like a generic version of someone else I've already heard before. And the same can still somewhat be said today. He might have carved out his own sound a bit by 2025, but the 2025 Tory sounds nothing like the 2018 Tory or the 2014 Tory. He's always kind of been aligned with whatever's hot at the moment, while never truly, breaking boundaries or carving out his own sound or influence. Like, to make this video, I went back to like some 2014 Tory songs, and I just discovered this song from 2014, and like, this sounds exactly like 2014. Like, this sounds like a Drake or a Kurt Cobain's. Yeah, that's around my city, that you know. He's like a time capsule of whatever the current sound of hip-hop is. And speaking of Kurt Cobain's, I then found out Tory Lanez actually has a song with Kurt Cobain's from 2013 where he literally sounds identical to Kurt Cobain's. Cause you know what's up. He can't make you famous like this. Now don't get me wrong, again, Tory Lanez definitely knows how to make hits. He has some amazing music, but his originality and authenticity has always kind of been in question, and it'll play an important role into where he is at this point in his career. I discovered Tory Lanez through songs like Tim Duncan, Diego, Blow, then Lord Knows with Meek Mill, and on all these songs he kind of sounded like a Walmart version of Travis Scott. Then I discovered songs like In For It, where he sounded exactly like The Weeknd or Drake. And over time, as I followed his career a little more closely, I'm like, okay, I see what he's doing. He started segmenting his styles into different projects. Like, he had a series called The Chicks Tape and another one called The New Toronto. And on The Chicks Tape, he would remix old R&B records, and that's where he'd get into his Drake or The Weeknd bag, which it's like he's already losing originality points because he's simply remixing old songs, copying the flows, the style of that song. But then there was this added layer of biting, if you want to call it that, because he would sound exactly like Drake or The Weeknd or Chris Brown on all these songs he was already remixing. Then he also had his hip-hop mixtape series called The New Toronto, where he'd get more into his Travis Scott bag. And I found this Reddit post from 9 years ago, which I think sums it up perfectly. Tory Lanez is like if Travis Scott had a baby with Drake, and that baby slept with Future and Young Thug's son, and they named it Tory Lanez. The music is dope though. The music is definitely dope. And all this biting, or influence if you want to call it that, brought Tory a couple problems his way. First, there was footage that leaked of him fighting Travis Scott backstage at a show, and it was seemingly because Tory Lanez was doing a little too much talking to the press about being Travis Scott's ghostwriter. You're not the only person that they say on the show. I'm not the only one. Listen, days before this, I tweeted, I said, yo, you a legend for making your song. At the end of the day, nigga said I sound like something, my nigga. I said what I said. Everybody can get out of here, every single person. My understanding is, you tweeted, I can't sound like somebody. Now listen, this is the problem. This is the honest truth. The song that you wrote, he asked me 2014 to do a verse for you, bro. To do a hook for you. And I guess it kind of makes sense. Like, Tory Lanez was always pitted up against Travis because he sounded so much like him early on in his career. So Tory Lanez had to rebuttal that by being like, how can I sound like someone who I've actually ghostwritten for? And that could be why early on in Tory's career, he sounded so much like everything else that was hot at the time, because Tory actually came in the game as a ghostwriter. In an early 2014 interview with Hot New Hip Hop, Tory was talking about how he had ghostwritten songs for Akon, a song called Been Getting Money. He ghostwrote the Casey Veggie song Actin' Up. He ghostwrote songs for August Alsina. And in the article, it wasn't very clear, but it had stated that he actually wrote the song Quintana Part 2 by Travis Scott and T.I. And when I read that, I was like, there's no way this is true. Like, that's one of my favorite Travis Scott songs. If you guys have listened to the last part of that record, then you know that that's one of the best uses of auto-tune and harmonizing that Travis Scott has ever done. And I'm like, damn, well, it's kind of disappointing that one of Travis Scott's best performances was written by someone else. It also really kind of made sense because that last part of Quintana Part 2 was exactly how Tory Lanez sounded on every one of his earlier records. But then I found the visual version of this interview where Tory's actually speaking, and I believe he clarifies that he had actually written the song Brand New Choppa by T.I. and Travis Scott, not Quintana Part 2. It's still unclear. Hot New Hip Hop has it as that he wrote Quintana Part 2, but this is brand new Choppa, and again, it definitely sounds like early Tory Lanez, but again, early Tory Lanez sounded like Travis Scott. It was kind of ubiquitous, if that's the right word. I just wanted to use that word.
People don't really actually know how much writing I really do, you know what I'm saying? I did the latest shit for Travis Scott and T.I., the record that they got, the brand new Choppa shit. I wrote that. I'm talking brand new Choppas.
But now, speaking of ghostwriters, this is where Tory's problems kind of escalated. See, the biggest cosign that Tory got early on came from Meek Mill on his 2015 album Dreams Worth More Than Money, as Tory actually opened up the album being the first voice we heard on the intro track, Lord Knows. And from there, he was kind of roped indirectly into the Drake and Meek Mill beef. Tory comes from Toronto, the same hometown as Drake. Unlike Drake, a bunch of you guys have been telling me you've been Anita Max winning some free cash from playing mobile games. So I want to put all you guys on to something that almost seems too good to be true. All right, let me give you a little glimpse into my life. When I'm not making this content for you guys, I have a disgusting addiction to my phone. My daily screen time is higher than Drake on that album cover, higher than Snoop off the edibles. So if you guys suffer that same addiction as me, I want to put you onto something that's going to change your life. FreeCash.com is a program that partners with mobile games that are looking for more users to play their games, and they will literally pay you to play their games for free. All you got to do is sign up using the QR code you see on the screen or using the link in the description of this video. You make an account super easy. All you got to do is put in your email, create a password, verify your email, and then you're good to go. And they got a bunch of games. My favorite is the Monopoly Go, because we're always on the go trying to make some money. Once you make an account, you just click the game you want to play, follow the directions that they give you. The directions are super easy. Usually you just got to download the game and start playing. So it's about time you put that phone addiction to good use. Again, use the QR code you see on the screen or the link in my description. Create an account and you could start making more than $150 just to play a game on your phone. And again, going back to how relentless Tory was in every situation to overcome any problem he had, beat the odds, come out on top, and then literally being on top of people's hands while he's performing at his shows. Tory Lanez did anything he could to make it. He was homeless at one point within Toronto, sleeping on the streets trying to get a record deal. This was like in 2010. And at the same time, a freestyle pops up on YouTube with the title saying Drake's little brother Tory Lanez freestyle in the room. At that point though, he didn't sound too much like Drake, more like Drake's mentor Lil Wayne, because again, Tory kind of likes incorporating whatever's hot at the moment into his style, and this was still back in 2010. And in 2010, a couple months after this freestyle circulated, he posted a video online clarifying that he was not Drake's brother, like that YouTube title suggested, but he did have an offer for Drake. He offered him $10,000 to listen to his music, and if he didn't like it, he could simply take the money and walk away.
Now all these artists behind me represent the artists that I personally respect in the rap game, and I personally want to play with. So let's start with Drake. Now I know there's a lot of rumors going on about us too, saying that I'm your little brother and all that. But set the record straight. I'm not Drake's little brother, I never have been. Now Drake, I get compared to you on a daily basis, and it's an honor, I like your music. But I got 10 G's here that says you will love mine. And if for any reason you don't like my music, 10 G's is yours. Now I work hard for my money. My mom always told me that if there was anything I ever really believed in, just go all out for it. This is all I got. Come play the game, Drake. Keep in mind, I can't lose.
Drake didn't respond to this, but you could tell even early on, Tory had this relentless competitive drive within him, and while the talent may not have matched, he was confident that he could come for the Canadian crown. And that's what he did. He worked his way up to signing a record deal with Interscope Records in 2015, and by then it seemed like he kind of harbored a bit of resentment towards Drake for never really acknowledging him as one of the up-and-comers from out of the city. Maybe it's because Tory sounded too much like Drake, maybe it's because Drake couldn't use Tory like he did with The Weeknd. Whatever it was, again, Tory had some resentment, and he referenced Drake on a 2015 freestyle with Sway in the Morning where he rapped, "I know these guys about to act scary, T.O. guy only spitting without the Blackberry." And this is in reference to Drake's Hot 97 freestyle with Funk Flex, where he pulled out a Blackberry and struggled to keep up with the beat as he was trying to read lyrics off a tiny Blackberry screen.
Doing these shows every night, so I'm coming in, ooh. That's how you feel tonight, Flex? Hold up. Do you call me off now? Call me all the way off now. All right. I'm gonna get this. Hold on. Can we come back?
And Tory in his own freestyle was emphasizing that, you know, he's from Toronto, but he's not like Drake spitting with a Blackberry in his hand. And we saw that from that 2010 freestyle that was titled Drake's younger brother, Tory Lanez, because in that freestyle, Tory was actually using a piece of paper, not a BlackBerry. I guess that's a little bit of a step up. I don't know. If you could crawl on people's hands during your concerts, I think you could memorize a freestyle, but what do I know? I just spit these freestyles for you guys at the intros of these videos. But that BlackBerry wasn't the only thing that Tory Lanez was hating on. At the time, again, in 2015, this was right when Drake released If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. On that cover, you see a little praying hand emoji with the number 6 on it, and obviously Drake was calling himself the 6 God. He was calling Toronto the 6 because of its area code 416. And Tory Lanez didn't like this too much because he tweeted, and then quickly deleted, a tweet saying, "This whole calling Toronto the 6 thing, it's not cool, bro." And then after deleting it, he said, "I support everything that comes from Toronto. Don't let me be misunderstood." One of Drake's affiliates, P. Rain, tweeted out, "Hey, kid with all the beads on, behave yourself before I really have to remind people you're from Brampton. People let this rap stuff gas them." And then he posted a picture on Instagram of Tory Lanez wearing a couple bead necklaces. Then, of course, around that same time, Meek Mill calls out Drake for having ghostwriters. Tory Lanez is standing right there next to Meek, doing a bunch of collabs with him, and even getting unintentionally inserted into this back and forth. Tory, since the beginning, was very confident in coming for Drake's spot. We saw that in his video where he's offering Drake 10K, saying that if Drake doesn't like his music, he could take the 10K and walk away, but Tory's making his way into this industry no matter what. And then later in 2015, he does an interview with The Fader where he talks about finally getting signed, and he was asked what it feels like to be quote-unquote the other guy from Toronto. And his response emphasized the confidence he had to gun for Drake's position. He said, "I was actually the second artist that got signed to a US deal after Drake. Before The Weeknd, before Party Next Door, before all these guys. And I think what made it so emblematic for the city was that I was the only guy next to Drake who was talented at the level of being able to spit a hot 16, sing amazingly, and write songs. I was the only person from the city coming head to head." But of course, at this point, Drake's on a much higher level. He drops back to back, clobbers Meek Mill in that beef. Then we get to 2016, where he releases a song right at the start of the new year called Summer 16, and this is the first time where we hear Drake take shots at Tory Lanez on wax. At the time, Tory had just released his mixtape, The New Toronto, and on the start of the second verse of Summer 16, Drake rapped, "All you boys in the new Toronto wanna be me a little." He continued rapping, "Oh yeah, it's your time now, that's what everybody say. I used to wanna be on Rockefeller, then I turned into Jay. Say you seen about it when you see me, man, but you're never home anyway." The Jay and Rockefeller line could be in reference to the fact that Tory wanted Drake to sign him to his label, and similarly, Drake is saying he used to want to be signed to Jay-Z until he became as big as him. He also used the flow that Tory used on his song Blow, and he made reference to Tory's song Round Here when he rapped, "Getting things done around here, how you let me run around here, I'm not even from around here." About an hour later, Meek Mill clapped back with his own song called War Pain, where he said, "Tory's from the 6, you're hating on him, Lord knows." Tory also seemingly responded to the track the next day, tweeting out the single letter L, and then also posting on Instagram with him throwing up an L with his hand. Of course, he deleted all these things because you'll see later on that he really wanted no smoke with Drake. Tory has had his fair shares of physical altercations. Travis Scott, allegedly Megan Thee Stallion, August Alsina. He's always very much walked back any potential at a confrontation with Drake. But that's not to say he hasn't clapped back with a couple bars aimed at Drake of his own. After the beef with Drake, it looked like the lights could have been off permanently on Meek Mill's career. The future was looking dim. But about a year and a half later, he dropped his comeback mixtape, and the biggest song off that project, Dream Chasers 4, was the track with Tory Lanez titled Liddy. And this was an insane track. To me, this song defines 2016 perfectly. And Tory had some nice bars for Drake on this track. Firstly, he's adopting the same flow that Drake used on Summer 16, similar to how Drake adopted Tory's flow on that song from Tory's song Blow. And Tory proclaims here that he's the man of the hour, he's the guy with the airtime, and he talks about his haters laughing at his hairline because he was going bald, and he said, "I laugh about it, I be feeling them. See, we be both making M's, they be making memes, I be making millions." That could be a reference to Drake because the summer beforehand in 2015, after Back to Back was released, he went on his OVO Fest stage and performed the song with a bunch of memes of Meek Mill showing as the visuals as the song played. He continues with the most direct line aimed at Drake saying, "I just counted up a Quentin Miller, a QM that's a quarter milli." Quentin Miller was the name of the ghostwriter Drake used on If You're Reading This Is Too Late that Meek Mill exposed, which kicked off their entire beef. Tory also came in the game as a ghostwriter. Now he's on a Meek Mill song talking about Drake's ghostwriter, saying that while Drake is posting memes, Tory is counting a QM, a quarter milli. He also took shots at Drake on a freestyle to the song Uber Everywhere, where he rapped, "Smack that smile clean off your face. You don't know about no trap stuff. You don't be around this way. You're some actor guy, boy. I used to see you on the screen," referencing Drake's come up as an actor on the show Degrassi. And in probably Tory's best move of this entire subliminal war, he pulled a classic Tory move and did what he knew best by remixing his counterpart's song. He remixed Drake's song Controlla, and while again Tory has often adopted Drake's sound within his own music, he always comes with this unrelentless energy, and he actually sounded a lot more lively, a lot more energetic on his remix of Controlla than Drake did on the original. So that remix Tory did kind of took a little bit of steam away from the success of Drake's original record. If we're being real, Tory outdid him on this song. And Tory was asked about it, saying, "I just like that song, that's all it was. I'm not a hater, I've expressed this before, I've never been a hater. We like you. We just want to be number one. Is there a problem with that? Can I be the best? Can y'all watch me be great? Will y'all allow me to do that?" Again, emphasizing that he was just gunning for that Canadian crown. But Drake didn't seem to like that too much, because on his Summer 16 tour, he performed the song Summer 16, and he replaced the bars that were initially aimed at Tory, where he rapped, "All you boys in the new Toronto wanna be me a little." He replaced that with, "All you boys doing fake Controllas wanna be me a little," hinting at Tory biting his sound, doing remixes of his own songs, even though, in my opinion, he did it better. They would continue sending shots at each other, but before they did, Tory actually did an interview where he spoke on why Drake was taking shots at him to begin with, and he said, "I don't know what that man has against me. I'm getting money over here. I'm good, young, I'm finally in a position to feed my family. Please don't try to take that away from me. All I want to do is rap. I'm a Drake fan. Drake could diss me 20,000 times and I'll never diss him. I'm a fan." But they did both end up dissing each other, most notably in 2017 when Tory dropped the track Drive You Crazy, where he rapped, "I pray I never dress like y'all. Only bird on my shirt is when I press that raw." And that's obviously in reference to the OVO owl that Drake puts on all his sweaters. Then Drake drops More Life, which was riddled with Tory Lanez disses on the outro Do Not Disturb, and on the song Portland with Quavo and Travis Scott, another guy who Tory was beefing with. Drake takes subliminals at Tory, making plays on words with his government name and his debut album called I Told You. On Do Not Disturb, Drake rapped, "You overnight celebrity, you one-day star, I told you that I'll be in this for eternity. I'm a reflection of all your insecurities. Behind closed doors, a lot of sex god worshipping. Done talk now, cause there's other stuff that's concerning me." Again, Tory Lanez's government name is Daystar, and here Drake is calling him a one-day star, basically a one-hit wonder, because at the time, Tory had only one major hit with the song Say It. And he's telling Tory, any dissing that you're doing stems from the fact that you're really just insecure of my position. You want to be at that number one spot. You wanted me to sign you. I never did. I never paid you no mind. And now you're out here dissing. But behind closed doors, you're copying my sound. You're remixing my songs. You're praising me. You're glazing me. And you'll see later on in the story, Tory definitely does a lot of Drake glazing. Then on the song Portland, Drake takes more aim at Tory Lanez using his government name Daylight, rapping, "Got a torch trying to light the wave, biting everybody, which is ironic because your next album probably won't ever see the light of day. Had fans, but you let them down. But I guess it's how you guys getting down." Again, referencing the fact that Tory Lanez bites everyone, and he got lit off of other people's sounds. "Got a torch trying to light the way, biting everybody, which is ironic because your next album probably won't ever see the light of day." Tory's government name is Daylight. Drake was here basically saying that your first album flopped so bad, you've been biting everyone, and at this point your label probably has zero incentive to put out the second album. It won't see the light of day. Daylight. You get it? Clever wordplay. But just about 2 months after More Life was released, Tory and Drake ended up patching things up, posting an Instagram picture of them together, and then Drake brought out Tory at his OVO Fest in August, where they both performed Controlla, and Drake spoke to the crowd saying, "This guy right here, we had problems with each other and we hadn't even met each other. I met the man and he's a great guy."
Talk to the boss, man. I want to say something. I want every young person in this building to just look what's happening on this stage, and please take this as an example in your life. I want you to understand something. You see me and this guy right here? We had problems with each other. We had never even met each other. I met the man, and he's a great guy. So I want you to make some motherfucking noise for somebody that's carrying this city on his back all across the motherfucking world. A young king. He goes by the name of Tory Lanez. This is that real city shit. Hold up.
hold up. I know you the speech dude right now, but me, give it up for Drizzy Drake!
And this was kind of like a torch passing moment in a certain sense. Drake was letting Toronto know that this was the next guy up in terms of who was making waves within Canada. And Tory took that and ran with it, but in my opinion, never fully living up to what I thought he might have been capable of with features like Liddy with Meek Mill, with his remixes to Controlla. There was always moments of greatness, but there was never anything fully groundbreaking with Tory Lanez. He'd go on to give us, I don't even know how many projects, upwards of 10 in the last, 5 to 7 years, all of them adopting different styles. He had hits in all different types of subgenres, bounce hits like his song Freaky, R&B trap type hits with Talk to Me. He started biting DaBaby and Roddy Ricch when they came in the game around 2019, and he had hits that sounded like they could have belonged on a DaBaby album like Broken a Minute. He was dropping rap projects, R&B projects. I think his biggest hit came with Chris Brown, where he remixed an old Chris Brown hit called Take You Down. It was a lot of remixing, recycling flows, and if you want to be generous, at the bare minimum, he was taking a lot of inspiration from people who either came before him or people who were kind of dictating the sound at the time of current mainstream R&B or hip-hop. He went from sounding like Travis Scott to Drake to Chris Brown to DaBaby to Roddy Ricch, but all the while throughout this time he's still delivering hits pretty consistently and slowly growing his fan base. And then he reaches his peak in 2020. This is where the entire world goes into lockdown, the coronavirus takes over the world, and Tory Lanez does what he does best, showcasing his energetic personality to the world. He comes up with this quarantine radio Instagram Live series where he basically gets on Instagram Live, and as if it's like a visual radio show, he starts hosting different rappers, influencers, models, etc., and they're just kind of having this party on Instagram Live. I'm not going to play clips here because this video will get taken down, but essentially he was on Instagram Live having women pour milk all over their butts as they're twerking. I think Drake even made an appearance on Quarantine Radio, but he wasn't twerking, pouring milk all over himself. But I guess the world was really bored throughout this time because this became the most popular thing on the internet, and it even helped Tory break records as he achieved the accomplishment of having the most viewed Instagram Live at the time in history. And the momentum didn't stop there. I believe around the same time he got out of his record deal, he became independent. I think he owned his masters as well. He started his own record label. He signed a couple of artists of his own. He was dropping albums independently and selling the most that he ever had in his entire career. He was also kind of forming into his own artistic identity at the time. Again, this was 2020. Music was really dry at the time, and Tory Lanez, with his, extreme energy and his vast consistency of dropping projects one after the other relentlessly, he found himself becoming one of the bigger rappers of the mid-tier of hip-hop, if that makes sense. Obviously, you had the big players, the Travis Scotts, Drake, Future, Kendrick, J. Cole. Then you had this kind of second class in terms of cultural and commercial relevance. Artists like Young Thug, Lil Uzi, Playboi Carti. Then you had this new crop of rappers at the time who were emerging, like the Lil Babies, Gunna, Roddy Ricch, DaBaby, Pop Smoke, A Boogie with the Hoodie, TJ, Polo G, Megan Thee Stallion, Wink Wink. And then you had Tory Lanez, who was kind of like one level above them, slowly climbing the ranks in that middle category with the Playboi Cartis and Lil Uzis. Again, this was 2020. Tory was selling what most mid-tier rappers were selling with mixtapes, and he was gearing up to drop his first independent full-length album with the most buzz he's ever had, the most viewed Instagram lives, all that. And then there's rumors that start circulating that he starts dating this new up-and-coming rapper, Megan Thee Stallion. Or I guess you could say she wasn't up-and-coming at the time. She'd been in the game for probably about 1.5 years at this point. But this was a power couple if I've ever seen one. Actually, I should say a tower couple with the way that Megan Thee Stallion towered over Tory Lanez. And this is where the Napoleon complex comes into full effect. Because, again, at the height of this man's career, with the most viewed Instagram lives in the world, he gets on Instagram Live in a jacuzzi with Megan Thee Stallion and Kylie Jenner. After beefing with Travis Scott, he's now in a hot tub with Megan Thee Stallion and Travis Scott's baby mama. And this is like the human equivalent of Bitcoin hitting $100,000. Like, it's at its absolute peak. How much better can you get in life than being in a hot tub with Megan Thee Stallion and Kylie Jenner? While you're completely free of any label liability, you own all your masters, and you're at the most popular you've ever been. So any project you drop, you own all those masters, and it's going to sell better than any project has ever sold in your entire career. And again, you're in a hot tub with Kylie Jenner and Megan Thee Stallion. But just like Bitcoin at 100K, what goes up, unfortunately, must always come down. And again, like I said at the beginning of this video, this was the most outrageous downfall we've ever seen within music. All seemingly self-inflicted and easily avoidable. I'll spare you guys the details. We'll keep this short. You could watch the other 10,000 documentaries on YouTube that discuss the incident that went down with Tory Lanez and Megan Thee Stallion on that night. But essentially, they leave this party at Kylie Jenner's house. They start arguing. Apparently, Tory Lanez was not only allegedly romantically involved with Megan, but also with her best friend Kelsey, who was also at that party with Kylie Jenner and Megan Thee Stallion and Tory. An argument ensues as they're on the way home from the party. Megan Thee Stallion ends up getting an injury to her foot. For the first few days after this went down, we didn't really know exactly what happened. Then she came out and said that Tory Lanez actually hit her with a firearm. He denied this relentlessly, dropping an entire album that detailed the situation, his perspective of it, his relationship with Megan Thee Stallion. He went to court, rejected any plea deal, maintained his innocence. And this was like one of the most confusing cases we've seen in music, right? Because he is adamantly denying any allegations made against him. Meanwhile, Megan Thee Stallion is coming out publicly, putting her reputation on the line, saying that he hit her with a firearm. Innocent until proven guilty, yes, but it's like also, what incentive would she have to lie about this? I'm not saying she was lying. I'm not saying she wasn't. It was very strange because, again, at the same time, Tory Lanez is constantly denying it, constantly rejecting plea deals, taking the whole thing to trial, and refusing to take the stand to testify in his own name. I guess because he would consider that snitching. I don't really know. I'm completely detached from that, but you got to be really confident in your case and in your innocence to not take the stand and tell your own story, and to think that the evidence will just fall in your favor so heavily that you'll be proven innocent, even though Megan Thee Stallion took the stand to say that you did hit her with that firearm. I mean, even Drake was taking shots at Megan Thee Stallion on his album, saying this girl lied about getting shots, but she's still a stallion. He's putting his own reputation on the line to defend someone he used to beef with, constantly saying free Tory on multiple occasions. Tory Lanez's father even coming out of the courtroom after the trial to state that this was all some big conspiracy from Roc Nation, Jay-Z's label, the one that Megan Thee Stallion is signed to tear Tory Lanez down.
I just stood here in this Los Angeles County and witnessed the worst miscarriage of justice that this world has ever seen. You want to know how I feel? I'll tell you exactly how I feel. I got some names that I want to call. Alex Spiro, Desiree Perez, and the whole wicked system of Roc Nation, including you, Jay-Z.
Yes.
You who say you rose from the gutter, but you have traded and bartered the souls of young men, and you're still doing it.
I don't know what incentive they would have to do something like that. And to be honest, again, I was kind of conflicted. I didn't know which side to believe until I heard these jail calls that came out, right? Because again, there was a third party involved in this. It was Megan, Tory, there was the driver as well, but the other person who was the main culprit within the argument was Megan's friend Kelsey, who Tory had allegedly been romantically involved with as well. On the night that this all went down, before Megan told the world that Tory did hit her with the firearm, Tory did end up getting arrested and spent the night in jail. And while he was in jail, he decided to make a phone call to Kelsey, Megan's friend, who was a part of the altercation. And in that phone call, while he doesn't admit to anything, he's apologizing relentlessly. Apologizing for what? No one knows to this day, but it most definitely sounds like he's guilty of something. I'm going to try to play it right here if we don't get copyright stricken. If I can't play it due to copyrights, then I'm sorry, and you guys can go look it up on your own.
This is a free call from
Tory?
an inmate at LAPD jail.
Hello?
Hey.
Y'all got out safe and everything.
Megan's still in the hospital. I'm outside the hospital.
You said what?
I said Megan's in the hospital still. I'm outside the hospital waiting. Feeder, something like that. Feeder.
You know, bro.
Sure.
Regardless, I know she probably never ever gonna talk to me ever again. But, bruh, I just want you to know, bruh. I was just so drunk. I didn't even know what the was going on, bro. I didn't even know what the was going on, bro. Like, I never do some shit like that, bro. Just so drunk. I didn't even understand what the was going on, bro. Like, so whatever, bro. But, you know, regardless, that's not going to make anything right. And that's not going to make my actions right, bro. But I'm just deeply sorry, bro. I never even moved like that, bro. Like, never moved like that at all, bro. Like, for real, dog.
I know. There's a lot that happens, but...
A whole lot, bro. Like, a whole lot, bro. I feel crazy, bro. But in this state, like, what happened already, bro. I can't take it back, bro. I'm just telling y'all, I'm sorry, bro. Like, I think I was just too drunk, bro. I don't even remember what we was even arguing about, bro. Like, thank you, bro. I appreciate it. I'm sorry again, bro. Like,
I think honestly, I think we're gonna try to, because obviously, like, the longer you're in there, the more hot it's gonna get. Because you know it's already on. Like, there's no names released yet, but the report is already out. You know.
But like, out is what? What you mean out?
It's on some app. You know, Megan's team is on top of this. So,
yeah, but like, there's no way that Megan's like on the thing.
You're listening to Street TV.
No. So far, none of that is there. But I mean,
yeah, I don't think it's gonna be one of those. If anything, the only that's gonna get this backlash is me. It's not gonna be her. All right. It is what it is. Regardless if I get out of here today or not, bro, I just want to let y'all know, bro. I'm sorry, bro. Like, I never did that if I wasn't that drunk, bro. Like, you feel me?
Yeah.
But I think we can all agree, whether you believe that Tory did this or not, these phone calls from prison that, you know, are obviously recorded do not sound like a man who thinks he is innocent. And now it's about 2 years later since this all went down. Tory Lanez has been in jail in LA, serving out this sentence. His appeals from the court keep getting rejected. And while he has not yet been inserted back into the free world, he's decided to insert himself into Drake's beef with Kendrick Lamar for whatever reason. I mean, again, at the beginning of this video, he did, you know, like I said, constantly say that he would never go up and diss Drake. He was a big Drake fan, but he's taken this to another level. So I forgot to mention again throughout this, to speak on Tory's relentless energy to always fight against any adversity he was faced with, I'll give him this. He broke some pretty incredible boundaries while he was locked up, discovering an innovative way to record music from prison and make it sound like it was actually recorded within a studio. He's the first artist to ever crack this code. And the music that came out literally sounded like it was recorded in a professional studio. And even when they shut it down, Tory still kept fighting and has now seemingly been recording music through a jail phone. He hopped on a song with DDG called Handling Business, and this is where he sent some shots out at Kendrick. But before he did that, he emphasized that the only reason why he was locked up was because he didn't take the stand and testify in his own name during his trial, saying, "They sent me to prison and gave me a 10-piece because I wasn't telling, but I made an oath to the city to never go snitching, even if it killed me or make me a felon." Later on this verse, emphasizing that, you know, he's on more violent time than ever, rapping, "Sent me to prison, and all that it taught me was, if it go down, how I could stab you." I mean, if you're trying to convince the world that you're an innocent man and you didn't commit this violent crime against a woman, you think the best way to do it is to say, yeah, I'm only locked up because I didn't take the stand and that, you know, prison taught me how to stab people. Not the best way to get back into the good graces of the public. But anyways, he continues mentioning Drake's beef with Kendrick, saying, "I be up praying and waiting for the day that he comes for me the way he did Drizzy. I got the card in the wallet and Big Brody problems are my problems, so F how you feeling about it. Brody gonna stand on his own with 2024. Ain't no fair ones in Toronto. Pablo, I told you these guys was talking about us and popping this stuff because we got it. If they had $1 for every time we think about them, they wouldn't even have $1. Possibly a reference to Kendrick's track, How Much a Dollar Costs. And he's basically saying here that, you know, he wishes Kendrick came at him the same way he did Drake and that he'll stand up for Drake no matter what, even though Drake was very ready to tear him down early on in Tory's career. So much so to the point where Tory had to get on the radio and say, you know, I just want to be great. You really want to take the food out of my kid's mouth? But anyways, he continued talking crazy, hopping on a jail call to an interview with the Full Send podcast, which features Kyle from the Nelk Boys, a Canadian content creator. And Tory was asked about what he thought about the beef with Kendrick and Drake, emphasizing that DDG song wasn't actually a diss at Kendrick, even though it most definitely was. He also defended Drake filing a lawsuit against UMG for the release and promotion of the song Not Like Us, by saying that this is fighting against the machine, similar to what Tory did fighting against Roc Nation or whatever machine he wants to blame for his incarceration currently.
I commend any artist that has the balls to go out and rage against the machine, because as a man who did it myself, it is one of the most exhausting things that you can imagine. It's like going up against the richest and richest billionaires who have the most richest and richest resources. I have respect for anybody who does that. It's not just about Drake, but anybody, and I encourage artists.
And then he says that people want to compare Drake suing UMG to some street stuff, but it's not street stuff, it's corporate stuff. Even though at that point, it's a little contradictory because Tory Lanez was claiming that, him getting up on the stand and testifying would be violating street codes, even though that situation was not a street situation to begin with. It was an argument with a female.
I commend any artists, whether it be Drake or anybody else, who will rage against the machine as long as they know that they have the facts and the actual proof to back up what they're saying. Because it's not an easy thing to do, regardless of how it looks. And I know people are looking at it from a street angle, but with all due respect, this is not a street angle. And what Drake is doing, no matter how you want to put it, he's really doing this for the rest of us artists.
And then he goes on to say that he knows Drake, and he compares Drake to a war general, saying that the moves that Drake is making might not look good today, but in the grand scheme of things, it's going to work out in Drake's favor because he's playing the long fight.
It's either you look at it as start a revolution, or you look at it as it's just Drake doing some shit, and you feel like he's doing this because he lost the battle. But being a man that knows him, that is not no dumb bro. He's a very smart individual. He's like a war general, very patient. And sometimes when he makes certain moves, it's not going to make sense at that moment. But the grand scheme of what he's doing is so smart.
And then he's asked directly about that verse he did on the DDG record and whether or not that's what he was referencing in it, where he says, they're coming for Drizzy. Is he talking about, him going up against UMG and this being like a whole corporate battle? And Tory backtracks and says, no, it's more him just, being ready to compete in general, not necessarily specific to Kendrick's battle with Drake or UMG.
One song you did while you were in there, the feature on DDG song, is that what you're kind of speaking to? Or what did you mean when you said, I hope they don't come for me the way they came for Drizzy?
Nah, I was just saying, straight up, look, here's the reality, bro. I come to compete. When it comes to my craft, I'm here to compete with anybody. A lot of people thought that was like a Kendrick diss. It wasn't a Kendrick diss. It was an anybody diss. I love to compete. You know what I'm saying?
And he does emphasize, though, that this was just a diss in general to anyone that wants to compete. However, even though it wasn't a direct Kendrick diss, he does wish he was in Drake's shoes and he could have done that battle for Drake and went toe-to-toe with Kendrick.
I almost wish, sometimes I wish I could have jumped in Drizzy's shoes and did the beat for him. You know what I'm saying? Regardless, you feel me? But it's just that's how I feel about the situation. It's not like I was talking to anybody specific. I just feel like, I'm here to compete.
And I don't know. To me, that's tough talk coming from someone who, in my eyes, has not necessarily won any battle that he's ever been a part of. Joyner Lucas, Cassidy, go back and look at the diss tracks that they aimed at each other. You tell me if he could come for Kendrick Lamar. But it seems like he's always had this soft spot for Drake, and over the last few years has been determined to prove his innocence. And that's no different than on this brand new album called Peterson that he just released last week. Tory Lanez, again, has always had this relentless energy to be the best, almost this delusional confidence, you could call it, to be the best, because at the same time, while he is dropping tons of music, incorporating various styles, he's also kind of doing it riding off the back of a lot of other artists who he's taken a lot of his sounds from. And while he has always been a fighter, fighting his way through that crowd on the hands of all his fans, like I showed you guys at the beginning of this video, to then, fighting, being homeless, to signing a record deal, then fighting for his independence, getting out of that record deal, fighting the Drake's brother allegations, to now, fighting for his freedom in prison. And with the confidence that he's exuding, saying that he wishes he was the one stepping into that battle with Kendrick Lamar, you would think that this album, with, all the issues Tory has to talk about with him, fighting for his life behind bars, he'd have a lot to say here and a lot of time to concoct an album that would be, revolutionary for his career. I mean, again, he's embarked in the most insane downfall we've ever seen within music, and he's been fighting for his innocence the entire time. He must have a lot to say about it within the music. And seemingly the whole album's recorded through a jail phone. Even the album cover is a picture of him in prison. And it's interesting because, again, he hasn't been in the free world in a couple years, right? And he's typically taken a lot of inspiration from whatever's hot at the moment. Again, he went from kind of biting Travis Scott to kind of biting Drake, kind of biting The Weeknd, kind of biting Chris Brown, to then kind of biting Roddy, Ricch, and DaBaby. But now that he's behind bars, he seemingly hasn't had, probably as much access to technology and streaming platforms to be able to keep up with what is hot right now. And with him not having as much of a pulse on the culture and having a lot of time to reflect and write music on his current situation, it's interesting to see if he'd be, biting or coming more into his own style. And will he be talking about what went wrong at the trial that caused him to end up in prison for so long? Because again, he keeps claiming his innocence. He should know exactly what went wrong there. He also said on Instagram that this album was a part 2 to the first album called Daystar that was dedicated to his situation with Megan Thee Stallion that was released back in 2020. So he must have a lot to discuss on this project. So we will spend the rest of this video breaking it all down, seeing if he comes into his own artistically and if he gives us some real insight into what's going on, or at least some reflection into the right and wrongs of the entire situation. So the intro starts off with samples of news report headlines, people reporting that Tory's been sentenced to 10 years, Charlemagne giving him Donkey of the Day, and then Tory comes in on the jail phone saying that he's not going to give up his faith even though it's going bad for him. Then it quickly transitions into the first actual song off the album called Free Me, where Tory's speaking again, saying that don't let emotion supersede your intelligence. 15 seconds will get you a life sentence. While that's some good advice, I think it's an interesting choice of words considering the fact that whether Tory is guilty or innocent, it definitely was not more than a 5-minute altercation that costed him what's looking to be 10 years of his life. And right away with the quality of the vocals on this song, you could kind of tell it's being recorded through a jail phone, which I think is very cool. Like, he might be the first artist we see that gives us a full-fledged album that was solely recorded from a cell. And again, he had what was seemingly a higher quality mic for a while, but it seems like they took it from him. And whether you love or hate Tory, you always got to give him that credit, in that his endurance for creating, no matter what position he's in, is always at the highest level. Like, his output, the amount of projects he put out, is arguably more than Future. And literally, as he's serving this sentence, he got his biggest hit of his entire career with the song The Color Violet, I believe it's called. And it's not even rap, it's not R&B, it's a disco song. He put out a whole disco album right before going into prison, which speaks again to the, endurance he has to keep creating, but also to the, vast amount of inspiration he takes from his counterparts, because The Weeknd, just about a year before that, also put out a full-fledged 80s inspired disco album. And you could tell the mastering on this song is kind of hard to do well through, whatever device they're using to record it. Like, some vocals are lower, then it randomly gets much higher. This song, in my opinion, is not the most exciting way to start off an album. He's coming in with this, Roddy Ricch type flow. That was another conflict that Tory had. It was short, but Roddy Ricch didn't like that Tory took his beat and freestyle over it in a similar flow. For the song, I believe it was Die Young. So they had a quick, back and forth. But again, it's a repeated theme in Tory's career where he kind of takes another artist's style and then him and that artist kind of have a conflict with each other. But anyways, we'll keep moving on. So this song, essentially, it's about him, pleading with God to free him now because he has, family and kids and friends who depend on him. Not really touching on how he ended up in prison if he truly is an innocent man. More so just, praying to God, hoping that he could reobtain his freedom shortly. Then you get the next song, Sneeze Wrong, where he kind of goes into more detail about, what he's witnessing within prison. He's talking about a story of a man getting stabbed next to him and that the cell gets crazy when the COs leave. He's talking about how he wouldn't kick it with certain prisoners within the cell, depending on the type of paperwork they have. He's talking about his son asking when he's coming home, but he doesn't want to give him the date just because it's so far out in the future. He's wrapping all this over this dark, suspenseful production, using this kind of like Drake timestamp record type flow. I like the subject matter, but the delivery is kind of repetitive and definitely something I've heard before from both Tory and the other artists that he's taken quote-unquote inspiration from. Then we get to the next song, White Lightning, which from a Sonic's perspective might be one of my favorite records off the album. It's this dark, moody R&B record. There's some nice harmonizing on the chorus. The vocals kind of just blend in to the instrumental, mainly because it's being recorded through a phone. So the vocals aren't as crisp or poignant. They don't really stand out heavily. They kind of just blend in. But it's this nice vibey song. I like Tory with the melodies. This is actually the type of sound that I was hoping to hear on the recent Drake and Party Next Door album. I'm talking the melodies, not the fact that it sounds like it was recorded behind bars. But not a bad song nonetheless. He's talking about a girl who slept with his friend while he was in the cell. On the chorus, he's talking about getting drunk off white lightning, which I believe is like alcohol made illegally in prison. Let me know if I got that right in the comments. And again, this is more of an R&B cut, but he's still talking about dudes fighting within the prison, even saying that the cops were trying to film him and that he's the richest guy within the prison. And makes you think, I mean, not to count pockets, but I guess to count pockets, you kind of wonder, like, after all the lawyers and the child support and any other expenses he had after a massive case like that, like, how much money does Tory still have, and how hard is it to, continue making money while you're behind bars? I mean, he's lucky he owns his masters, but like, does he have income streams while he's in there? Like, are people buying Tory merch or his CDs, or like, how's this guy making money? Anyways, then we get into the next song, Guide Me Through the Storm. The transitions throughout the album are pretty interesting. Like, each song kind of blends into the next, and there's a lot of very personal intermissions, whether they're from Tory or his family members. A lot of talking to God, especially on these intermissions. On this next song, Guide Me Through the Storm, Tory again adopts that Drake timestamp type flow, and he's reflecting on being transitioned from one prison to another within LA and being on this bus with a bunch of other prisoners, and reflecting on, the lack of opportunity and counseling that they got, which in turn has led them down this dark path, rapping bunch of guys on the bus that never got the counseling. Instead, they gangbanged, they sold dope in broken houses. It started with the parents living poor with broken spouses. Feed me sack lunches in the plastic pouches, got me feeling effed over like the casting couches. He continues this rhyme scheme. I mean, again, Tory Lanez is a great rapper, but sonically this sounds like something we've heard 1,000 times. So even if he's painting a new picture, telling a new story, it's kind of hard to revisit because it feels like something we've heard 1,000 times before. He's also talking about Iggy Azalea, saying, "County jail crying real tears to Iggy Azalea. I know you put up with some stuff that just wasn't familiar. I loved your ear and loved your heart, though you wasn't Amelia." I mean, I'm guessing he's referring to her situation with Playboi Carti and how he's kind of like an absent father. I don't really know why he felt like bringing her up, but he also talks about the New York Times doing him dirty, friends switching up on him. And I think the best set of bars on this entire album come from this song where he raps, "Young Dave banging on the beat. He's in the ER right now, producing this in critical condition. I'm recording up in state prison. It's fair to say we black and beat the odds of both statistics. Both of us supposed to be either dead or in jail. But he been close to death, and I'm in jail and still prevailed. God willing, this go #1 from in the cell. It won't be long before the release date's in the mail." I thought that was a really dope perspective and, positive way to kind of look at the whole situation, right? Like, his friend producing the beat in the emergency room, Tory recording it, while he's in prison, looking forward to his release date, and his friend, getting out of the hospital, escaping death. Both of them, escaping the tragic fate of many people growing up in poverty, which would be either landing up dead or in jail. Then Tory's dad at the end of the song delivers, a sort of poem or sermon. I don't know what you'd call it, but essentially he's talking about how, Tory getting locked up left him devastated, but he realized that, the power's in God's hands, and Tory fighting is representative of, a lot of the youth who are fighting for their freedom while being incarcerated. And that's why he was able to, leave his son's faith up to God. Then we get into the next song, Nine Side, and I think this is my most replayed song so far of this album. I mean, I like the introspection on a lot of these more, lyrically charged tracks, but he just sounds like such a carbon copy of Drake with the delivery that it's hard for me to kind of replay these tracks. But songs like Nine Side, where he's just kind of flowing, it's just more of a vibe, they're easier to listen to. And I mean, I like the pocket he gets into here. At around the 1 minute mark, he starts talking about Iggy Azalea again, saying that, he's crying about her. I guess, he might have been romantically involved with her before he ended up in prison. He gives this distasteful bar talking about when it's war, his guys in Toronto are tripping and shooting up car seats, which, again, I don't think a lot of these bars are not the most, tasteful things to say when you're in prison for allegedly, hitting someone's foot with a firearm. And then, 30 seconds before you had your dad, giving a sermon or some sort of poem talking to God, saying that, the world should be fighting for Tory's redemption, but then Tory's talking about, shooting up car seats or babies in cars. I don't know. Guilty or innocent, not the best choice of words, I guess. He's talking again about being the richest guy in the prison, and then the beat switches and he kind of goes into the same flow that SZA uses on her chorus of the song Snooze. Nothing too exciting there. Then we get into the next song, Lunch Tray, where he's talking about slapping the CEO if he plays with him. It's a high energy song, kind of sounds like his 2020 hit, Broke in a Minute, which I think was using a flow that he kind of took from the Baby, who was, really emerging as the next guy up at that time. And then on a side note, the Baby kind of took that flow from Takeoff from the Migos, RIP. On a side note, I do think one of the best parts of this entire album is that, Tory's not out here pretending like he's still in the free world rapping about cars and jewelry and money and women and all that. I mean, actually, I take that back. He's rapping about women and money to a degree, but it's all through the perspective of, this prison that he's in being his world right now. He's really discussing, reflecting on what's going on in real time. The fights that are breaking out, the CEOs that are, mistreating him, the interactions he's having on jail calls with, girlfriends or friends who have switched up on him, interactions with his family members. And we still haven't even gotten to, the most, I guess, drama-infused songs on the project, where he starts talking about the whole situation with his lawyers or making some weird passes at Doechii or talking about TDE. And yeah, ultimately, I do think Tory's a great writer, but I do also think he kind of walks the line of really struggling to reach a high level of introspection. Like, he's not making a sing about me, I'm dying of thirst. I think even Drake gets, deeper on a lot of his older records than Tory does, but there's no denying Tory is definitely a strong writer. And yeah, this is a braggadocious song. He's talking about being on the phone with Suge Knight, who's telling Tory that he could be bigger than Tupac. He's saying the judge is only making him more famous than he already was. But then you get, after this braggadocious energy, it kind of hilariously transitions into a gospel interlude where they're singing about freeing Tory. I mean, just an interesting time to kind of slide that one in there, but I'm liking the transitions. I think that's an entertaining part of the project. I don't believe there's any features on this album aside from a couple intermissions from his family members. Then you get the next song, Sailor Moon, where he's talking about his girlfriend sleeping with his friend while Tory was incarcerated. Kind of like Drake sleeping with Wayne's girlfriend while Wayne was in jail. Tory raps, how could you let him get what's mine? Kind of a bad way to talk about a girl, given the case that you're, currently incarcerated for. Then we get to the next song, Verdict Day, where he's sampling Tupac saying, all the people want to hear is that I'm guilty. It's not about going through a fair trial. It's not about, serving proper justice. The headline always looks better and works better to just say, this man is guilty. And Tory here is back to using the Drake timestamp flow. He's talking about how his old lawyer pressed him to take a bunch of pleas that he said no to. He talks about that initial lawyer playing both sides of the fence, saying she was in bed with my opposition. She had actually sent him an email as the trial was going on, stating that blaming Kelsey Harris for hitting Megan with the firearm was not a quote-unquote viable strategy, saying, as we discussed on Saturday, I'm not comfortable advancing the Kelsey defense primarily because I don't find it to be a viable strategy. Tory then filed an ethics complaint against that attorney, claiming that she had undisclosed connections to Roc Nation and Megan Thee Stallion, creating a conflict of interest as she was, defending his case. He continues rapping about her on the song, saying, Sean Hawley, that's a name I would call special. That is the name of the attorney. Only a special person could rep you and want to dead you. Go to your DNA expert and say, don't test you. You fully excluded, but inconclusive is what she tells you. The DA's first offer was 9 years. The second, it was 6 at 85, about 5 years. This lawyer kept on pressing me to take it. I'm like, nah, I ain't do the crime, so I'm going to sit it down right there. She's losing my bail hearings. I feel like it's on purpose. I begin to side-eye. I'm seeing what's on surface, but she's a black woman, so hey, I say I trust it. But at what point is it, you did me dusty? Working for my accuser and working for me. All the information I give her is at Roc, like Roc Nation. Y'all had my lawyers in y'all pocket. She's circling T's, and that's why Megan always talked like jail was certain for me. It's because y'all paid for them 10 years. Let's keep it honest. My judge sitting at the Roc Nation brunch like a plebicalist, and y'all was seeing outcomes and he was seeing dollars. Why would they go to this extent? Please forgive them, Father. So, essentially saying his first lawyer had ties with Roc Nation and was, playing both sides of the fence, saying the judge was at the Roc Nation brunch. Again, tying this all back to Roc Nation, this being Roc Nation's fault that he's in prison. Again, I'm not sure what incentive Roc Nation would have for incarcerating Tory. I don't see, him being independent or releasing music outside of a major label being enough of, an incentive to put on this whole case to try to frame him for something he didn't do and then lock him up for 10 years. I mean, that's really kind of what he's implying here. And I mean, this would sound like some grand conspiracy even if we were talking about a much larger artist. Tory Lanez is not that big of an artist where if he went independent, the music industry would greatly suffer. So again, I just question where he believes the incentive is for Roc Nation to try to lock him up unless he was really guilty of this crime. He then goes on to play a voice note from that lawyer, Sean, who was, cutting ties with him. He plays that at the end of the song and then talks about how the next lawyer he had to hire charged him $900K to defend him, and also played a voice note from that lawyer. Then we transitioned into the song Lawyer Fees, which kind of answered my question from earlier about, how much money does this guy still have after all these lawyer fees? And then also, like, how is he continuing to make money while he's incarcerated? And in this song, he's telling a girl that, he doesn't have the funds on him right now because he's spending them on the lawyers. He's sampling, that excerpt from Blood on the Leaves with the, I ain't got the money on me right now, so I told you to wait. And I mean, again, Tory's a fighter, man. He's definitely a fighter. If he says in this song, if he goes broke, he'll come back next week richer than ever. But to be honest, nothing really too interesting about this record. Then we get to Slip and Fallen, where he's talking about, some of his family members, his cousins being too lazy to take care of their grandmother who's losing vision and suffering with dementia. I think so far, aside from the songs that are kind of just, simple vibes, the ones that are him opening up about family issues or struggles he's having while locked up are, standouts from a subject matter perspective. It's just kind of hard to replay them because, again, they just really flat out sound like Drake songs. But it's got to take a lot to get yourself to, get up and record stuff like this while you're in, a position of being in prison. You don't have real studio equipment. You don't see yourself potentially getting out for the next 10 years. Like, the future looks dim. And writing is probably the only thing that's keeping you sane right now. Like, when your freedom looks so far away, you really have to find purpose while you're in there to keep going. So it's good that he has this and that he's relentless in terms of, making sure his purpose and his creative freedom, and output doesn't actually slow down. Is this his best body of work or his most unique? In my opinion, not necessarily. You get to the next song, Charlie Rowe, which, again, he's using another person's flow with Roddy Ricch. Then you get to probably the worst song off this project called Phone Sex, literally just about phone sex. Not really the song for me. I don't know who the song would be for, unless maybe, you're a woman who is, dating someone who's incarcerated right now. Then the next song, TDF X LA County Jail, has a bouncy beat, but the flow's kind of stagnant again. Again, he's talking about, the fights that he's been getting into while in jail. It's cool to see, again, the perspectives of him phoning this in, almost like, he's on a jail call with the listener. It's sad, but it's beautiful to put all this into the music. And I mean, I can't imagine like the circumstances within prison, how dangerous it must be, and how you got to be, on guard at all times. So I'm sure what he's telling us is very much real here and very much validated. But at the same time, a lot of these records, he keeps talking about how, he's not turning down fades or that he's getting into these scraps within the prison. And it's just a bit unfortunate that, another repeated theme with him throughout his entire career, not just when he's been in prison, is that he's gotten into a ton of fights. I think he knocked out August Alsina. He was threatening to fight Travis Scott. Obviously, we know there was some sort of altercation with Megan Thee Stallion. He's trying to, emphasize that it didn't get physical, but on all these songs, he's emphasizing that, his hunger for violence hasn't necessarily died down since he got incarcerated. But again, given the circumstances, you definitely have to have your guard up, I'm sure. Then the beat switches and he goes into this kind of like Young Thug Gunna-esque flow. And he's talking about how prison made him a villain and that he wants nothing to do with any rapper because, they weren't really checking for him except for Chris Brown, who helped Tory while he was locked up. I guess he forgot about Drake, even though 2 weeks ago he was, saying that he wished he could fight Drake's battles for him. Then the next couple songs, I mean, I'll just go through the highlights because really, to me, these songs didn't stand out too much. The song Gangland has these like kind of, in my opinion, poor sample flips on songs like So Appalled by Kanye or UGK and Outkast's International Players Anthem. The flow kind of sounds uninspired. He's talking about being a pimp in his city, and you could check the site back pages, which, again, not the greatest talk if you're trying to gain sympathy points from the women. Then he's talking about his Drew lawyers with law degrees. I mean, I would hope they have law degrees, but if you're really innocent, like you keep saying you are, and somehow you lost this case, I don't know how good their law degrees were. There's not much talk about, why he was found guilty specifically, except for, again, blaming it on conspiracies related to Roc Nation. Some insane bars about Roc Nation on the third verse from Wolfgang Peterson. I'm guessing that's someone who's related to Tory Lanez, saying that, don't touch that dial, Jigga, don't touch them kids, you switched your style, M caught the bid, who's whistleblowing? It must be Des Perez, and I say it from my soul, zoom wear a lens. Des Perez, I believe, being the president of Roc Nation, and him telling Jay-Z not to touch kids. I don't know. Insane bars. Then you get into the next song, I Effed a Lady Cop. I mean, self-explanatory what this is about, but Lil Wayne did it a lot better. He's the only one that I believe has the right to be making songs about romanticizing women cops. Then you get to the next song, My Shayla, where he's talking about the lawyer/reporter Megan Cunniff, who was actively covering, the Tory and Meg case, and most definitely not siding with Tory throughout the whole thing. Tory on this song claims she's a puppet, claiming that, again, his lawyer was playing both sides throughout the entire case. Then he gets Donald Trump AI vocals at the end of this song, where, whoever's doing this is calling for Tory Lanez's freedom and then just slap Donald Trump vocals on top of it. Pretty funny. Then you get the song Back Outside. I mean, this album kind of really just drags towards the second half. I don't really see many standouts. This one is kind of like a gospel sounding record where, again, he's just kind of talking about what he's going to do when he's back outside. Then you get one of the most interesting moments on the album coming from the outro track titled Free Tory. Now, there's some interesting bars on this track. The intro starts off saying, they took our brother off the playlist. He was boycotted from the A-list. When he gets out this year, those who hated will remain nameless. I believe this is his children who are actually saying this poem. And they're not lying. Tory was definitely taken off those playlists. Like, if you go search for his album, it's nowhere to be seen on any playlist, on any streaming platform. It's not on those homepages. It's nowhere to be found. Like, you have to really actively search for it to even find it, which is a little crazy to me, considering, like, you could find Diddy's music, no problem. You could find R. Kelly's music. You could find Chris Brown's music, but Tory Lanez, they decide to silence. I don't like the picking and choosing, Even Kanye West was getting playlisted and all that. I mean, Tory's in prison for the crime. He's blackballed from society. I don't think that means that his art necessarily needs to be blackballed from streaming platforms. But at the same time, songs like this are a little too outlandish to be, plastered all over the Rap Caviar playlist. So let's jump into what Tory is rapping about here. So he references Ray Vaughn's song Crash Out Heritage. Ray Vaughn is an artist signed to TDE, and he made a song which was basically a rebuttal to Joey Badman, who had claimed that, the ruler was back and he was the king of NY and there was too much West Coast D-licking. But on that song from Ray Vaughn called Crash Out Heritage, he also referenced Tory Lanez and how Tory Lanez was talking crazy on that DDG record, saying that, he's going to slide for Drake essentially. So Tory claps back here, with kind of a double entendre, because he could be referencing Kendrick as well, saying, Crash Out's coming from Lil Homie at TDE, but that's just my little brother. All he wants is to be a me. Too much respect for Top Dog to ever just be a flea. Plus, so many Compton guys with me, they'll bleed a T. Everybody could get it. And everybody really could get it, because he continues going at other members of the TDE camp, saying, unrelated topic, other day I seen Doechii rapping tongues and I low-key love her. I won't DM and F the chance up that we're going to be sleeping with each other, and I don't want to be sitting in the bed with her one day. She's on the gram looking back like, I know you wasn't. 2025 Free Tory, man, that stuff won't be a miracle, and miraculously, all you're finna see is women acting all hysterically. So yeah, essentially painting the picture that, he's gonna be freed, it won't be no miracle, and that he'll be posted up in bed with Doechii, and he doesn't want to, ruin his shot with her right now by DMing her, because then, she'll be looking back on it when they are sleeping with each other, saying like, what type of time were you on back then? Pretty ridiculous. But what's even more ridiculous is on the second verse, he emphasizes that whole conspiracy of the fact that Roc Nation or the higher-ups tried to lock him up because he went independent rapping. I went independent, they locked me up for it, lied about that something they happened to do. Then, he gets into a spoken word kind of speech at the end of the track, talking about, the fighting he had to do just to get this album officially released, talking about how, he's a Canadian citizen, so all his money was tied up in Canadian banks, and when he was first officially locked up, they froze his assets. He had no money to transfer for lawyer fees, and he hit up all his rapper friends to help him out, to get them the money, and then he would, I guess, send it back to them. No one helped him out except for Chris Brown. So that's one of the last artists that he shouts out on the album, or actually the only artist he shouts out on the album. And in my opinion, honestly, like, it's nice to see that he kind of gives us a glimpse into his headspace, into what's going on within the prison. And as a Tory fan, it's kind of nice to, see where he's at mentally and see the curtain peel back on, the struggles he's facing throughout the past few years and throughout his time, especially behind bars. But overall, as actual songs, maybe it's the way, they were recorded through the jail phone, the quality, the mastering not necessarily being there. Maybe it's the stale flows. There's not really much for me that's sticking here that I think will stand the test of time in terms of replay value or anything that really pushes the, boundaries in terms of storytelling or introspection or, harmonies, vocal delivery. And anytime he really does open up, aside from a few moments where, he's discussing his friend being in the emergency room or, his lawyer kind of playing both sides, he's not giving us, in my opinion, an honest enough glimpse into why he was truly found guilty. And for someone who has been banging on the table declaring his innocence for so long, not giving us enough of a real reason to establish that, he didn't commit this crime. It's a bunch of these, baseless conspiracies, in my opinion. Again, why would they lock him up for 10 years because he wanted to go the independent route? He's not a Michael Jackson. He's not a Prince. He's not a Drake. Him going independent will not shake the industry up enough to the point where, the higher ups are really going to suffer that much. So to be, constantly going back and forth between these, gospel type intermissions on the album, praying to God for your freedom, then going back and talking about, how violent you are, how dangerous you are, and then, flipping that, talking about how this is all big one conspiracy. There's a lot of contradictions here. And I think ultimately we can summarize Tory's current situation into one sentence here. Just like his height, the gap between his ability to be more creatively captivating rather than comically controversial is unfortunately quite small.